Haidong! In this video, we're going to talk about reverse grip part 2. Last time we talked about stabbing, right? Stabbing with reverse grip. Now obviously stabbing forward is a little bit weird in many cases, right? So like just, if you remember from last time, like this kind of awkward stabbing kind of stuff that wasn't as effective with a very long weapon. But we introduced that, as well as a few transitions, as well as the main purpose of reverse grip in most forms, which is again just to put the sword away. Again, using the geometry of your hand, again using your pinky ring middle to really help maintain that pressure again on your from your sword onto the hand that's holding the sheath. But that's a little bit of a recap, so let's keep going. General transparency thing again, this was inspired by Seki Sensei. Again, the video is going to be down below, and if there is something from specifically his video, I'm going to try to mention it at least from memory. If I'm taking things from anything else, I'm going to be using some Kali/Eskrima in this video in particular, because we're going to be working on slashing and stuff like that. That's going to be the main thing we're going to be taking away from a non-Gumdo, non-me source. But in general, if I'm taking something directly from a source, I'm going to try to cite it. Otherwise, it's just my weird brain juices or the Federation saying something. It's not going to be the Federation saying anything, but if it were, I'd tell you. But quick recap of the actual moves that we did, right, kind of leading up to it. So we were here, we're going offline to do a fancy little strike. We switch to reverse grip, we plant our sword on our hip. We're going to use that, again, that translational energy as opposed to just the turning energy to turn and thrust, and we're going to draw out of the body this way. So let's actually talk about the main thing you probably use a sword for, slashing, right? So the combination I'm going to take is actually from Kali, right? So last time we kind of talked about like these different positions here. I'm going to take this directly from that system. So just so you're aware where that's coming from, this is it, right? Because Gumdo doesn't have that same organizational kind of way. They just say like, oh, this is Nyeropegi. You're like, cool jam, right? Versus this is very systematic. So what I'm going to be doing, I'm going to start with my on hand. Gumdo usually starts with this being number 1, but this is going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So to show you something with a standard grip, right? Again, so standard versus reverse grip. Standard grip, first position, second position, third, fourth, fifth, sixth. Again, Kali uses a lot of the offhand, right? But 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Again, if you want to add some fun thrusts, we can, but that's going to be a little bit different. So those are the 6 general strikes that I'm going to be using. So why would you use reverse grip as opposed to standard grip, right? Because there's got to be a reason, otherwise you're just doing something just for the sake of it looking different, right? So let's first actually talk about the benefits of standard grip and kind of use that as a comparison. Unfortunately, standard grip is pretty good, right? Like this is like generally how it was designed to be used, right? So when we just do those 6 basic strikes, there are other strikes as well, but we're going to work with those 6 for now. It's pretty good, right? So we can engage the shoulder, engage the hip to really throw that cut. Again, using the hip, using the shoulder. Again, using your core, drag down, using your hip, cut across, cut up. Pretty good, right? Now, I'm doing this one-handed. Obviously, you can do this two-handed, but we're going to be doing reverse grip stuff in a little bit, which is going to be not exclusively one-handed because we did use this technique, which is two-handed. But the slashes we're going to be using in this combination are going to be one-handed. So for now, just comparing one-handed versus one-handed. Now, repeat viewers will probably know there is a drawback to using one-handed. There's also going to be like pros as well as those cons, right? So the major con of using one hand is you don't have that squeezing power when you have two hands, right? So bear with me because it's probably going to echo. But when you strike with two hands, you usually squeeze on impact. Again, the reason for that is it's going to mitigate the shock. So it's instead of just hitting your wrist wherever it's striking, it's going to go through your whole body, because your whole body is kind of, I won't say seizing, but it's kind of clenching at the same time. So it's a whole body, right? So two-handed, cool, right? One-handed, cool. So we lose the squeezing power, right? Which is more of a safety mechanism in some ways, although it also helps with actually cutting into a body and stuff like that. So I'm going to make a differentiation, which I know is going to annoy a lot of people. I'm going to differentiate between a cut and a slash. This is something that I'm going to be taking from HEMA, at least the way Flower Point used for scoring. So an impact or a cut is going to be exactly what I just did. I'm reaching out and striking. Slashing, which I believe is the term they use, is when you're actually using the length of your blade to cut through, right? Because we're using a curved blade as opposed to a straight blade, slashing is actually super, super effective, which is why if you look at, like, for example, cavalry swords and sabers and stuff like that, usually very curved, because all you need to do is just kind of grind the blade through something. Anyway, that's going to come in a little bit. I didn't mention that just because it's a fun little fact. But one-handed is a lot easier to slash as opposed to cut, just because you don't have that squeeze as much. Can you still strike? Can you still cut? Yeah, absolutely. It's just easier to slash with one-handed as opposed to cutting one-handed. But you're here for reverse grip, right? So let's switch it to reverse grip. I'm going to do the same thing facing this way, then this way. You're going to notice one cut in particular is going to be, it's going to be kind of not as great, right? So if we're here, starting off, again, this is one, cutting down, cutting across, up, up. Same thing going this way, down, across, cross, upper. So I would recommend you try this yourself. One of those 6 is going to scream a little bit more than the others. That's not as effective. It's not going to be a quiz, right? It's going to be this side, right? So it's going to be your offhand side's top position. Mostly because, like, you can compensate for the power using different muscle groups with the other ones on this side. So for example, if we're doing a lot of cross cuts, you can do a lot of turning with the body. You can turn the hips, you can turn the shoulders a little bit more to get a little more power. You can even lead with the body a little bit more, kind of get that slashing motion. Same with uppercuts. One, again, using your hip and the back of your knee up. So you can get some pretty decent cuts from there as well. This guy, unfortunately, not so much. Again, just because of human geometry, as opposed to anything inherent about the top left position. It's just the way that the human body is. Yeah. But as with everything else, I highly recommend you actually try this for yourself. I'm just some dude talking on YouTube about this stuff. So you're going to feel a lot more by doing this yourself. Side note, I know I'm using a foam sword. Right? This is actually pretty heavy, so I love this sword so much. It's also going to show off a little more against the white background, which my other sword did not. But anyway, so the whole thing with that is actually try striking a target. As with everything, make sure you're doing it safely. Right? So if I'm here and I'm striking across, here, right? You're going to notice something happened that didn't happen as much with the other hand, and that is the rebound. Again, human geometry. This is going to be more natural as opposed to it being cocking back too much this way. Again, just how the human body works, right? But try it yourself. See what muscle groups you're going to be generally engaging with. I'm not going to tell you like what to do per se. It's kind of like an introduction of the idea of using these cuts. And before I move on to the actual combinations we're going to be using, try actually trying to cut with a reverse grip versus slash with a reverse grip. So again, using our happy little target here, just because it's easier with the cross cuts to kind of see what's up, right? Or maybe uppercuts. We're going to do a little bit of everything, right? So trying to actually strike. Okay. Not too bad. This side's gonna be weird, but you can still do it. Right? Same thing going up. Like so. Notice, again, the more I try to have an impact, the more I want to cut into something, the more the rebound's going to be. Obviously, if this was like an actual flesh tube, it's going to embed into it. It's not going to rebound, but it's going to be the same idea. Versus, try slashing through a target. Right? A little bit over-exaggerated for effect, but it's going to be a lot easier to slash with reverse grip than it is to cut in reverse grip. But I talk a lot, so let's actually do some combinations, right? So the combination from the form is going to be just doing some uppercuts from this position. So what we're going to do first is show you the generic way. They're going to alter it a little bit so it actually works a little bit more in a combat-y sort of situation. So all we're going to do is our 5 and 6 cuts. So again, for now, just to kind of as a drill, go nice and straight. Again, just here, coming in, slash, slash. If you want to do some steps, you can also do that. So the first level, just slash, slash, just going up the floor, doing the reverse grips. Again, you can try alternating feet as well. As with everything, right? Linear is okay in terms of like learning in a large group because it's a lot easier to teach. Just go this way. But in reality, you want to be going on angles, right? Especially in reverse grip. Why? Because it's shorter range, right? So linear stepping and stuff like that is more okay. It's not great, but it's more okay if we both have a longer weapon. But especially if I'm using a reverse grip, a shorter range guard versus someone using standard grip, I need to get closer regardless, right? And also I'm going to be relying on slashing, which is also even shorter range than cutting. So the way we're going to be doing that, just like how we were doing before with our initial down cut in part 1, is going on these angles, right? So I'm going to recommend for now cutting toward your knee, right? Don't cut off your knee because bad. But for now, like if I'm going to be cutting from this side, I'm going to be moving on angle here, here. Same thing this way. For now, I'm not going to care about stance. I'm going to be using sotosei, so our short stance, but you don't need to do it that way either. So from here, going on angles, uppercutting, uppercutting, uppercutting. And as with everything, I keep on saying that phrase. I'm realizing it as I'm actually filming now. But try this against a target, right? Try going straight on and try to have a cut. It's going to be kind of awkward, right? On both sides. Versus going really on that angle, on the side here, on that side here. You're going to get a lot more power and a lot more stability with that cut. So go on angles. So let's piece together what we have so far, right? So again, imagining we're fighting someone here, right? We're going to do some stuff until we're close enough that we're going to be cutting in, again, going offline here. We're going to switch, we're going to plant on our hip, we're going to look over our shoulder, we're going to throw our weight back as we thrust, and then drag it out of the body. From here, I'm going to be doing a step, stepping on the corner, uppercut, stepping on the corner, uppercut. I'm going to add a combination that is actually, I know we were waiting for it, this is actually inspired from Seki Sensei, right? This is also in the form, sort of, right? But first, again, run through that a few times, and I'll do that again with you here, right? So I'm cutting offline here, switch here, throw your weight back, draw it out, going off the side. Notice I just slid because that's how it is in the form, but that's up to you. Again, just sliding here is going to be a little bit faster. Stepping on the sides is going to be more effective and gain more distance. So keep that in mind, right? One more time, we're going to add that new combination in, right? So cut, shift, plant, look, thrust, draw it out. If you want to do a punch, go ahead, why not? You know, it's fun, right? And then going off on our sides with our uppercuts, From here, think about almost like doing a hip check as you throw a cut. I'm going to say to the 45 here, 45 from north, 45 or even closer to you. So do your uppercut, hip check as I cut that way, right? So this is going to have a few variants that you can kind of play with, right? So the reason why this combination is actually super nice is if you're already close range here and we strike, I'm actually going to step back to actually augment that shifting power, right? Here, stepping back, throw my hip as I cut, strike, right? So part of that's a little bit weird because this is kind of up against the wall. I'm going to move that a little bit. But using that hip and using that step back as you strike is going to give you both power, a little bit more stability, right? As well as getting you out of range, right? Sort of important if you're already in short range. So try the combination a few times. I'm going to move the target around to have a new perspective, but let's keep going. So let's try that a little bit more, right? So to reiterate from Seki Sensei's video, right? So he was using this not so much as a cut because he was actually starting at distance, so much as just an extra cover in case you need to protect yourself while you're evading. But I'm going to kind of encourage that actual slicing motion here. So from here, again, going off on the angles, right? So not, so for you can kind of see it up here. So instead of striking straight on here, do your cuts, go on angles here, here. Hip check as I'm going to, so this is good because I'm going to be stepping away from the target. I'm going to be able to use the hip to get a little more power, as well as actually throw out a cut as you strike, right? We're going to add a little bit in next video, but for now, practice that, kind of get a good vibe for that general movement, right? So the main thing with this is, again, stay safe as you do it, right? Because if you're not used to using reverse grip, it's going to be a little bit jarring in maybe weird ways. But I highly recommend keep practicing that combination until it's feeling more comfortable. Let's do that combination one more time, and then I'll release you, right? So starting off here, again, imagining you're actually engaging, you're getting close enough to actually get close to that diagonal. Shift, thrust, pull it out or punch, up to you. I'm going to be stepping as opposed to sliding, but step, step, hip check as I step away from this target here. I'm going to do this just so I don't hyperextend and kind of collapse on myself. But if you want to be dramatic and be like, ah, maybe don't do that because your hand's free. I'm going to also do it facing this way because I realize I haven't done that for a while, right? So cutting in offline here, switch, plant, look, thrust, pull out. Like I'm going to get some space. Angle, angle, stepping back as I cut. And we're going to eventually do a strike going that way. If you know the form, this part might sound a little complicated because you're like, that's not how it is. That's not how the Federation teaches it. But alas, this is the Federation. But yeah, so make sure as you go through this, stay safe, stay humble, and always keep training. Haidong!